Hello, this is another one of my videos on Shaykhism, this one dealing with Denis Hermann's take on the condemnation of the Shaykhis, the role of the Shaykhis in the condemnation of Babism. It comes from a long essay by him in Encyclopedia Iranica, so this is a section from his long essay on Shaykhism. Denis Hermann was the director of the French Institute of Research in Iran, and the author of a couple of books on Shaykhism, one in English, Kermani, Shaykhism and the Ijtihad, and another one in French on Shaykhism in the Qajar period. The question of Shaykhi attitudes towards the emergence of the Babi movement and religion and of Baha'i faith is very delicate. It is certainly one of the most polemicized aspects of the history of the creation of the Shaykhi school and its expansion in Iran upon the death of Sayyid Kazem Rushdie. It is also, in fact, the aspect of the history of the school that has received the most attention, both in Iran and elsewhere. It is, however, unfortunate that the discussion and works devoted to the subject have mostly been tendacious and partisan ever since the 19th century. The main reason may be sought in the ambiguity concerning the influence, real or imagined, that Sayyid Kazem Rushdie had on the founder of Babism, Sayyid Ali Muhammad the Bab, during his stay in Karbala. The Shaykhis of all schools taken together find themselves entrapped between, on the one hand, the accusation of a faction of the Usuli clergy who consider them the inspiration or even the creators of Babism, and on the other hand, the assertions of the Bab and the Baha'i religious leaders who claim the intellectual and spiritual heritage of the first two masters of the Shaykhi school. For Hermann, the historical and especially doctrinal link thus drawn between Shaykhism and Babism and then Baha'ism is mainly false. Any personal relationship between Sayyid Kazem Rushdie and the Bab must have been minimal, since the Bab was not initiated into Shaykhism. Thus he cites Abbas Amanat as referring to the Bab not staying long enough in Karbala to fully grasp the essence of Rushdie's teachings if he attended only 3 of his lectures, as seems almost certain. His debt to Azali or to Rushdie is limited at most. Again, he refers to my short history of the Baha'i faith in French. I don't know why he cites it in French rather than English. That although the Bab attended some of Sayyid Kazem Rushdie's courses in Iraq and then referred to him as my teacher, the Bab did not initiate any formal study of Shaykhism. Hermann then goes on to say the discussion of this inherent link between Shaykhism and Babism was used by a part of the Usuli clergy to discredit Shaykhism with the Shi'i masses. On the other hand, for Hermann, for the Babi, Baha'i and Azali religious leaders, this relationship between Shaykhism and Babism was necessary in order to establish historical and doctrinal legitimacy. They had to present themselves as the successors of Sheikh Ahmad Azali and Sayyid Kazem Rushdie, who perhaps represented at the beginning of the 19th century the most serious challenge to the authority of the clergy. The Babi and Baha'i religious leaders, for their part, represented the Shaykhi leaders as revolutionary dissidents. I'm going to interject there because I don't normally comment on the writers I'm summarizing in these videos, but I think that's inaccurate to describe the Baha'i or Babi view of Sheikh Ahmed Sayyid Kazem as revolutionary dissidents. But anyway, that's not a topic of this video. I'm just trying to summarize Hermann's views here. This is the sense in which we can interpret the statement by the Baha'i master Shokli Effendi, who proudly represented Babism as a process of transformation of Shaykhism into a religion that was spreading throughout the world. And again, he cites my short book, in which I'm quoting Shaykh Effendi. I'll give the original quotation from Shaykh Effendi rather than in Hermann's French, which is what he gives it in. I shall seek to represent and correlate in, however cursory a manner, those momentous happenings which have insensibly, relentlessly, and under the very eyes of successive generations, perverse, indifferent, or hostile, transformed a heterodox and seemingly negligible offshoot of the Shaykhi school of the Ash'ari, that's the Twelver sect of Shia Islam, into a world religion. A few scholars, including Henri Corbin, have stressed that these attempts on the part of the Baha'i leaders to lay claim to the Shaykhi heritage are greatly exaggerated. Most extant historiography in the area tends to perpetuate the confusion among Shaykhism, Babism, and Baha'ism. This problem is encountered in Usuli doctrinal refutations of Shaykhism in both Persian and European scholarly works on Babism and Baha'ism, and in works on Shaykhism. This historiographic approach also explains why the vast majority of work on Shaykhism deals basically with the first two masters of the order, and why the others have been so neglected. Despite the connections established between Shaykhism and Babism by some polemicists and even scholars, the Shaykhi masters were among the most vigorous opponents of Babism. The Kermani and Hamadani Shaykhis intervened principally on the doctrinal level, composing many treatises against Babism, while the Tabrizi Shaykhi ulama remained notorious for pronouncing a death sentence against the Bab. The Kermani Shaykhis wrote between them 13 refutations of the Bab and Babism, 7 of which were by Muhammad Karim Khan, which Hermann lists. He was certainly the Shi'i clergyman who wrote the most treatises against Babism during the Bab's lifetime, and then Hermann goes on to name the various works by Muhammad Khan and later by Zain al-Abidin Ibrahimi. Outside these 13 items, anti-Babi rhetoric is included in many other Kermani Shaykhi works, not specifically dealing with Babism. Again, he gives examples. The vast majority of this literature is in Persian, because the Kermani Shaykhi masters wanted to enable a large number of Iranians to read it. The Tabrizi Shaykh ulama were especially active on the juries and commissions that brought about the execution of the Bab in 1850. The 3 clerics who comprised the jury in Tabriz who interrogated the Bab and sentenced him to death were Tabrizi Shaykhis, namely Mullah Muhammad Mamaqani, Mirza Ali Ashkar Shaykh al-Islam, and Haji Mullah Mahmud Tabrizi. Haji Mullah Mahmud, known as Nizam al-Ulama, was influential in the Qajar court at Tabriz and one of the then Nasruddin Mirza's tutors, provided the written transcript of the Bab's case. The Tabrizi Shaykhis also wrote several refutations of Babism, although these were less detailed than those by the Kermani Shaykhis, and again he gives details of those, including one that describes in detail the trial of the Bab in Tabriz. Although the Hamadani Shaykhis were not yet organized when the Babi movement began, they nonetheless wrote several treatises on the subject. Hermann details these. Their primary purpose was to demonstrate that the claims of the Bab stood in contradiction to Shi'i doctrine and the teachings of the Imams. The Kermani and Hamadani Shaykh ulama were especially prone to ridicule certain claims and arguments of the Bab, including his successive claims to be the representative of the Imam of time, and then the Qa'im, the Messiah himself, and finally the Prophet bearing a new Holy Scripture. They also pointed out that his Arabic was weak. As I said earlier, I don't normally comment in these videos on the content of the authors whose ideas I am presenting, but in this case I'll make an exception. First of all, I disagree with Professor Hermann in his statement that there is basically no link between the Babis and the Shaykhis. I think there is a very important link, both because large numbers of the early Babis were former Shaykhis and presumably brought a lot of their Shaykhi ideas with them into the Babi movement. Secondly, that the Bab himself was obviously enamored of Sayyid Kazem, and this is an important aspect of his early statement of his own religious position. The best account I've read so far on the Babi-Shaykhi relationship is a now quite ancient article by Denis MacEoin on early Shaykhi reactions to the Bab and his claims. I'll give the link below in the notes. In addition, I would say that the relationship between the Baha'i faith and Shaykhism is very, very attenuated. Yes, Baha'i teachings are rooted in Babism, but it has its own very distinctive religious identity and concepts. And one example of that I think you can see in 3 Iranica articles on cosmology and cosmogony, and cosmology from the standpoint of Shi'ism, Shaykhism, and the Baha'i faith. Next year, if I have time, I'll do videos on those. But it's quite clear if you look at those 3 articles that in terms of those particular theological concepts, the 3 or the Baha'i faith view of these ideas of cosmogony and cosmology is very different from that of Shi'ism and Shaykhism. So many thanks to you for listening, and particularly thanks to my patrons for their kind support and encouragement. Without them I wouldn't be able to make these videos. So you're very welcome to support my channel if you so wish. Please do like, comment and share on the videos. It really does help. Subscribe if you want to be notified of future videos. I'll give a link to Patreon below if you want to provide practical support. Next week we'll talk about Shaykhism in the period since roughly 1942. Have a good day.